Leonard buckled into my passenger seat for Elise's wedding, the wedding I had been told not to attend, and handed me a sentence to memorize. If she asks, tell her you chose to stay home. I looked at him across the console. Who told her I chose that? He pulled his seatbelt flat against his gray suit. Ruth handled all of it. We need to go. I started the car, but I drove only as far as the next service plaza. Then I parked, turned off the engine, and said, "We are calling Elise before I carry you another mile." That was the first direct decision any of us had made about her wedding. I called Elise. When she answered, I asked, "Did you tell anyone you didn't want me there?" She went quiet. Then she said, "Mom told me you chose to stay home." I did not. Beside me, Leonard said, "This is not the time." Elise heard him. "Were you the one who told Daniel I didn't invite him?" "Your mother spoke to him." "That isn't what I asked." I told Elise exactly what I had been told, that she wanted only her biological father, and that I should say I preferred to stay away. "Nobody move," she said. "I'm calling Mom." She ended the call. The woman I had helped raise had not knowingly erased me. But that truth did not settle who would walk through the courthouse doors. Now Elise had a choice she had never been allowed to make, and none of us knew what it would cost. Until that morning, every important sentence had passed through somebody else. Leonard Shaw was Elise's biological father. I was the man who had married her mother when Elise was 11, and who had stayed after the marriage ended. Those two facts had lived beside each other for 23 years. Most days they did not need to fight. Elise called Leonard Dad. She called me Daniel. When she was 12, she once asked whether that bothered me. I told her I would rather have my own name said with affection than somebody else's title said under pressure. At the time, I meant it. I still meant it that wedding morning. What hurt was not that Leonard had a place. What hurt was being told Elise had chosen my absence, then being asked to make that absence convenient. 3 days earlier, Ruth had called me. Ruth and I had been divorced for 9 years. We spoke often enough to keep birthdays and practical matters from becoming awkward. She had a way of beginning hard sentences with the weather. "Saturday is supposed to be clear," she said. "That will help with the photographs." I waited. "Elise wants the ceremony very small. Nora, the witnesses, me, and Leonard." There are sentences you understand before they finish. Still, I made her say it. "She does not want me there?" "She doesn't want the day to turn into a question about fathers." I stood in my kitchen with a dish towel in my hand. "Did Elise say that?" Ruth was quiet long enough for me to hear her refrigerator motor come on. "She wants her biological father there, Daniel." That was not an answer, but it sounded enough like one for a hurt man to accept. I said, "All right." Ruth released a breath. "Thank you for understanding." I did not understand. I simply did not want Elise to spend the week before her wedding managing my feelings. The next evening, Leonard called. His rental reservation had been lost, he said. The motel shuttle did not go to the Civic Annex, and a taxi would be expensive on a Saturday. "Ruth said you weren't attending," he told me. "Could you give me a lift?" I should have said no then. Instead, I heard the old machinery start inside me. Someone needed to be somewhere. I had a car. I knew the roads. For 32 years, I had driven school buses through lake fog, construction detours, and winters when the painted lane lines disappeared. Getting people where they needed to go had become more than a skill. It had become the answer I offered before anyone asked what the question cost me. I told Leonard I would collect him at 9:15. He was waiting outside his motel in a silver-gray suit, holding a narrow white box with a boutonniere inside. He opened my back door first, as if expecting a driver, then laughed and climbed into the passenger seat. We had gone less than a mile when he said the photographer would meet him on Marlowe Street, 1 block from the annex. "Why there?" I asked. Elise and I are walking in together. Ruth thinks it will be nice to have an arrival picture. My hands stayed at 9 and 3 on the wheel. I thought the concern was avoiding a question about fathers. That is exactly why it should look simple. Then he gave me the sentence. If she asks, tell her you chose to stay home. The sign for the Bellwether Service Plaza appeared ahead. Fuel, cafe, restrooms, phones. I checked my mirror, signaled, and took the exit. Leonard shifted in his seat. The annex is the other way. I know where the annex is. I parked along the outer edge where the lot was quiet. The engine ticked as it cooled. Call her, I said. Daniel, don't make this a performance. There is no audience. It's her wedding morning. That is why she should hear the truth before the photographs. He stared through the windshield. You're going to upset her because your pride is hurt. My pride was hurt. That did not make the sentence in his pocket true. You have 3 safe ways to reach the annex, I said. You can call a taxi, you can ask the motel desk about another service, or I can drive after Elise hears from me directly. But I will not deliver you and then lie about why I am outside. He took out his phone, held it, and put it back. So I called her myself. Leonard unbuckled his belt as if the click itself were an argument. Are you satisfied? No. You got her upset. She asked us not to move. He opened his door. I need coffee. I watched him cross the lot carrying the white boutonniere box. Without him beside me, the passenger seat looked wider than it had a moment before. I did not feel righteous. I felt ashamed that I had almost driven him all the way to Marlowe Street. People hear that I stayed in Elise's life after divorcing Ruth and sometimes turned me into a better man than I was. I stayed because Elise and I belonged to each other in the ordinary ways we had built. When I married Ruth, Elise did not need rescuing. She had a mother who loved her and a father who appeared often enough to keep hope active. Leonard sent birthday money, called from different area codes, and made large promises with no calendar attached. I did not arrive with a cape. I arrived with a lunch thermos, a set of jumper cables, and a job that started before dawn. Elise was 11 and suspicious of any adult who said, "We'll see." She wanted times. What time would I be home? What time would we leave for her science fair? What time would I pick her up if the skating party ended early? Driving taught me that a child can forgive a slow bus sooner than a bus that never appears. I wrote times on a pad by the telephone and treated them as promises. At 13, she missed the activity bus because a teacher kept her after class. She called the dispatch office and asked the secretary for Daniel Mercer, Route 26. I drove my own car back to the school after my shift. On the way home, she said, "I knew you'd come." I remember that sentence more clearly than any Father's Day card. Leonard was not absent from every chapter. That would have made the story simpler and less true. He came to some birthdays. He paid for half of a used laptop when Elise started college. When his own mother was ill, he called Elise every Sunday for 6 months, and they grew closer. Then his work changed, his mother died, and the calls thinned again. Elise learned to welcome him without scheduling her emotional life around him. At least, I thought she had. When Ruth and I divorced, Elise was 25. I moved into a brick duplex 10 minutes away. For the first few months, she asked Ruth whether it was all right to call me. Ruth always said yes, and I mistook that permission for kindness instead of noticing the habit underneath it. Hard messages in our family traveled like children changing buses. Elise told Ruth. Ruth told me. I answered Ruth. Ruth softened my answer before returning it. Sometimes I did the same thing. Leonard would ask me whether Elise was angry. Instead of telling him to call her, I would explain what I thought she meant. Ruth would ask me to remind Elise about a family lunch because she listens to you. I would do it. We called it keeping the peace. In truth, we kept everyone from hearing the exact weight of anyone else's words. At the service plaza, I realized that Leonard's lie had not built that road. He had simply driven farther on it than the rest of us. Ruth called me 8 minutes after Elise hung up. "What have you done?" It was such a familiar opening that I nearly began defending myself. Then I looked at the empty passenger seat and chose a shorter route. I asked Elise a direct question. "This could have waited until tomorrow." The photograph could not. Silence. "What photograph, Ruth?" She exhaled. "Leonard wanted one of them walking in. And he asked me to drop him a block away so it would look as if he arrived with her?" I did not know that part. "What part did you know?" She said my name in warning. "No," I told her, "quote yourself. Don't tell me what Elise meant or what Leonard hoped. What did you say?" For years, Ruth's gift had been finding language everybody could survive. That morning, the gift looked tired. "Leonard said it might be easiest if it looked like original family at the entrance." The words sat between us. "Original family," I repeated. I told him that was a terrible phrase. "Then what?" "He said he had missed a lot and wanted one day where he did not look like a visitor." That, at least, sounded human. Vanity often grows around a bruise. Knowing where it came from did not give it the right to use me. Ruth continued. "I thought if he had the walk inside, you and Elise could have your own time later. I thought you would understand." "So you called me?" "Yes." "What did Elise say?" "She said she didn't want two fathers making her choose." "Did she say she didn't want me there?" Ruth's refrigerator motor came on in the background, the same low hum I had heard 3 days before. "Not exactly." "What exactly?" "She said, 'I don't know how to invite Daniel without Leonard acting wounded.'" I closed my eyes. There was the missing sentence. Not "I don't want Daniel, I don't know how." "And what did you tell her?" "I said you understood small ceremonies and would probably prefer to speak afterward." "You gave her my answer before asking me." "I was trying to keep her from spending the week mediating between you." "You made the decision and called it relief?" Ruth began crying quietly. She did not use tears as a weapon. That made it harder to stay precise. "I am sorry," she said. "Tell Elise what you told me. Use your words, not mine." "She is furious." "She is allowed to be." "Can you at least tell her I never meant to exclude you?" There it was again. One more message looking for a ride. "No, you tell her." Ruth went silent. "From now on," I said, "I'm not carrying invitations, refusals, or apologies between adults. Not yours, not Leonard's, not Elise's." "Families talk through each other. Ours has talked around each other long enough." I expected her to argue. Instead, she said, "All right." It was not forgiveness. It was the first clean agreement of the day. Leonard returned with coffee just as my phone rang again. Elise asked for all of us on one call. Her, Nora, Ruth, Leonard, and me. I told Leonard he could sit in the car or stand outside, but the phone stayed where everyone could hear it. He got in and shut the door. Elise began. "I don't want an apology circle. I want to know what was said, and then I want to decide what happens next." Nora's voice was near hers, steady but not directing. Ruth spoke first. She repeated Leonard's phrase about original family. She repeated Elise's fear that inviting me would wound him. Then she admitted changing uncertainty into decisions. "I told Daniel you wanted Leonard there," she said. "I let him hear that as you not wanting him. I told you Daniel would rather stay away. He never said that." Elise did not answer immediately. Leonard filled the space. "Your mother was trying to prevent exactly this." "What did you ask her for?" Elise said. "One photograph, one traditional moment." "You asked Daniel to drive you." "My rental fell through." And where was he supposed to go after he dropped you off?
Leonard looked at me as if I had supplied the question.
That was his choice. I spoke before my anger chose something larger. You gave me the sentence I was supposed to use if she asked. Elise said, "What sentence?" Leonard rubbed a thumb over the cardboard coffee sleeve. I quoted him exactly. "If she asks, tell her you chose to stay home." Nora said very softly, "Elise?" "I'm here." Ruth began, "What Leonard means is—" Then she stopped. That stop mattered. It was small enough that no one would photograph it, but it was the first time I had heard Ruth leave another adult's meaning in his own hands. Leonard said, "I did not want you pulled into a conflict on your wedding day." Elise's answer was quiet. "You put me in a lie on my wedding day." No one rescued him from that sentence. After a moment, Nora asked, "If there were no picture and no one watching the door, how did you want to walk in?" Elise gave one strained laugh. "With you." "Then why aren't we doing that?" "Because Mom said Dad would feel humiliated if he came all this way and had no part." Leonard said, "I am your father." "Yes," Elise replied, "that is a relationship. It is not an assignment you made on my schedule." I heard the Elise who had once demanded exact pickup times. I also heard the adult woman who no longer needed any of us to interpret her. "Here is what happens now," she said. "Every role is paused. Nobody comes to the annex until I call them directly. Daniel, stay where you are. I need to speak to you alone." The group call ended. Leonard shook his head. "She's talking like Nora now." "She is talking like Elise." Leonard left the car again. He walked toward the edge of the parking lot with his coffee and called someone. I stayed behind the wheel. Elise called. "I'm sorry," she said immediately. "You did not know. I should have called you." "Yes." She was quiet. There is a kind of false kindness that rushes to erase a true sentence because the person you love looks hurt. I had practiced it for years. I did not practice it then. "I should have called you too," I added. "I asked your mother if you wanted me away. When she did not answer directly, I accepted the answer that hurt and told myself I was protecting you." "Why?" "Because asking you would have risked hearing no." That was harder to admit than anything Leonard had done. Elise breathed out. "I didn't know how to invite you without making Dad feel replaced." "Leonard." "What?" "You called him Dad and then called me Daniel in the same sentence. That is fine. You do not have to change the words to take care of me." Her voice broke. "You always do that." "Do what?" "Make it easy not to choose you." I looked through the windshield at Leonard pacing near a picnic table. "Maybe I made it too easy for everyone to use my silence as an answer." She asked, "Do you want to come?" The honest answer had several rooms in it. I wanted to see her marry Nora. I wanted to stand somewhere she could find me. I wanted Leonard to understand what he had tried to take. I wanted Ruth to regret making me manageable. Only the first two belonged at Elise's wedding. "I want to come if you want me there," I said. "I do not want to walk you in. I do not want Leonard's place. I will not stand for a photograph designed to settle who your father is." "What do you want me to call you?" "Daniel." "That's all?" "That has never been small to me." She cried then. I let her. I did not fill the space with memories of everything I had done for her. Love is not made truer by producing invoices at the moment somebody is vulnerable. When she could speak, she said, "If I invite you as Daniel, will it feel like pity?" "Not if it is your choice." "And if I say I need today to stay the way it was?" The old fear moved through me. "Then I will need to be hurt by your real no," I said, instead of comforted by somebody else's borrowed yes. She was silent for a long time. "Stay at the plaza," she said. "Please." "I will." After we hung up, I rested my hands in my lap. I had stopped the car because Leonard gave me a lie. Now the larger boundary was waiting in the quiet. I would not compete for a place, but I would no longer disappear to make other people's choices easier. Leonard returned with his face set. "Are we going?" Elise asked us to wait. She called me. I told her I am coming as planned. She told all roles were paused. A daughter does not pause her father. I studied him. He was 66, 2 years younger than me, though that morning he looked older around the mouth. The boutonniere box sat on the dashboard where he had placed it. He kept glancing at it. "Why does the entrance picture matter this much?" I asked. "You wouldn't understand." "Try me." He looked out the side window. "Her relatives think I was never there." "Were you?" His head turned sharply. "I was working. Sometimes you were. Sometimes you weren't. And you stepped into a house that was already paid for. You got the easy years." That almost made me laugh. I remembered 13-year-old Elise throwing a shoe at her bedroom door because I would not let her ride with a boy who had no license. I remembered the year Ruth's hours were cut and every grocery trip became arithmetic. Easy was not the word. But Leonard was not asking for history. He was asking for absolution through composition. One father, one daughter, one frame. "The picture will not change those years," I said. "It will give us something that is ours." "Then ask Elise for a picture. Do not arrange one she has to perform." His voice hardened. "You already have what is yours. You got the school plays, you got the graduations, you got to be there when she needed someone." For the first time, I understood that Leonard did not only envy a title, he envied accumulated time. He could not recover it, so he wanted an image powerful enough to stand in for it. I felt sorry for him. Then he said, "The least you can do is drive." Compassion closed around a boundary. "I can take you to the annex as a passenger," I said. "No block-away drop. No story about why I am absent, or you can arrange another ride." "So you can pull up beside me and make her choose at the curb?" "I am not asking her to choose me." That is what men like you always say when they know they have won. "There is no winning a child, Leonard. She is 34. He picked up the boutonniere box. "If you end this ride, everyone will know what you did." "Then tell them yourself." I pointed to the taxi number posted beneath the cafe awning. "You are in a safe public place. The annex is 12 minutes away. You have money, a phone, and an available taxi. I am ending the ride." He stared at me. I had driven children whose parents forgot stops, teenagers who cursed at me, and once a loose goat that climbed aboard during a county road detour. Ending Leonard's ride was still one of the hardest transport decisions I ever made, not because he was unsafe, because I had spent decades believing that refusing practical help made every emotional accusation against me true. Leonard got out and slammed the door. Through the windshield, I watched him call the number. The passenger seat was empty again, but this time it was not evidence that I had been erased. It was the visible cost of his terms. Ruth called while Leonard waited near the cafe. "What is happening?" "Ask Leonard." She caught herself. "All right, what are you doing?" "Waiting for Elise." "Do you think she wants me at the annex?" "Ask Elise." "Daniel, I am trying. I know." There was no pleasure in making her practice. A boundary is not a punishment delivered one sentence at a time. So I softened my voice without changing the answer. "Call her," I said. "Tell her what you want. Let her answer." Ruth said, "I will." 10 minutes later, Elise called me. "Come to the annex," she said. No preface, no interpreter. "As Daniel?" I asked. "As Daniel." "All right. Dad is coming in a taxi, I know. Did you leave him?" "At a staffed service plaza with a taxi arriving. I ended the ride after he insisted on the staged drop-off." "Thank you for telling me exactly." It was the first time that morning anyone had thanked me for precision. "Mom is driving herself," she continued. "Nora and I are going together. The photographer will wait inside. No arrival pictures." That sounds clear. It doesn't feel clear. Clear and easy are different. Will you still come if Dad is angry? Yes. Will you still want me if I do not argue with him? She gave a wet little laugh. Especially then. I started the engine. On my old route, I used mileage as a kind of promise. 7 miles until the elementary school. 4 stops before the twins got off. 12 minutes from the service plaza to the annex. That morning I noticed something I had missed for years. Knowing the distance does not mean everyone must share the vehicle. Leonard's taxi left first. I waited until it turned onto the access road before I pulled out. Ruth came from the south side of town. Elise and Nora came from their apartment near the river. 4 routes. 4 drivers. No one carried anyone else's answer. At the curb. The Bellwether County Civic Annex was a square limestone building with a shallow covered entrance. It looked like the kind of place built for forms and waiting numbers, not for 5 adults trying to speak without translators. I arrived at 10:36. Leonard's taxi was at the curb. He stood beneath the awning with the boutonniere pinned crookedly to his lapel. Ruth waited near one of the columns. She wore a blue dress Elise had helped choose and held her purse with both hands. No photographer was outside. I parked in the public lot and walked over. Leonard did not look at me. Ruth did, but she did not come forward to explain him. That was the second clean choice she made that morning. Elise and Nora arrived together at 10:42. Elise wore a cream-colored suit and carried no flowers. Nora wore dark green. They got out on opposite sides, walked around the car, and met at the front. For a moment, none of us moved. Then Elise said, "I need 5 minutes." Leonard glanced toward the doors. "We are due inside." "They know we are here." The firmness in her voice did not come from Nora, though Nora stood close enough that their sleeves touched. Elise faced Ruth first. "Can you come inside without explaining anybody to anybody else?" Ruth swallowed. "Yes." Then Elise looked at me. "Can you come inside without leaving because you think it will help me?" The question found me. My disappearing had sometimes been generous. Sometimes it had also been a way to avoid asking whether I was wanted. "Yes," I said. "If you invite me, I will stay until you tell me otherwise." She nodded. Then she turned to Leonard. "Can you come inside without walking me in, and without telling people Daniel chose not to be here?" Leonard's jaw tightened. "After all this, you expect me to stand at the back while he receives credit?" "There is no back. There are 12 chairs. I came across 3 states. I know. I am your father. I know that too." He held out his hands. "Then give me 1 photograph, you and me walking through that door. It will stop the questions." Ruth opened her mouth. I saw the old response arrive in her face, the translation, the gentler version, the sentence everyone might survive. She closed her mouth. Elise waited. Without Ruth's language around him, Leonard's answer looked smaller. "What questions?" Elise asked. He stared toward the empty curb. "People ask where I was," he said. "And what would the picture answer?" His voice dropped. "That I was there." "Today?" He did not answer. "Or always?" His face changed, not into remorse, into exposure. "I wanted one day," he said, "where it looked as if I had always been there." The admission cleared away the last excuse. Even then the truth did not choose the next step for us. Elise looked at me. "If I walk in with Nora and there is no father beside me, will you still come?" This was the place where a story might reward me with Leonard's role. I could have taken her arm. I could have told myself I had earned it. But Elise was not a doorway through which one man defeated another. "Yes," I said. "I came to see you marry Nora." Nora held out her hand. Elise took it. "Mom, Daniel, Dad, you are invited as my guests. Nora and I are walking in together. If any of you need a different arrangement, choose it now." Leonard looked at the street, perhaps hoping his taxi had waited. It had not.
The consequence was visible and exact. The photograph he had designed would never exist. He would enter through the same door as everyone else, without my car hidden around the corner and without Elise's arm proving something time could not prove. He touched the crooked boutonniere. Fine. It was not an apology. It was enough to open the door. The ceremony room had 12 oak chairs, 2 windows, and a clock louder than it needed to be. Elise and Nora stood together at the front. Ruth sat on one side, Leonard sat on the other. I chose a chair between 2 of Nora's friends. No one announced who had raised whom. No one asked Elise to choose a father. She and Nora made their promises in plain voices. When Elise's hands shook, Nora covered them with hers. When Nora missed a word and laughed, Elise laughed too. I had imagined that if I ever attended Elise's wedding, I would remember every sentence. I do not.
I remember her looking around the room after they were pronounced married. Her eyes found Ruth, then Leonard, then me. She did not look relieved that a conflict had been settled. She looked present. Outside, the photographer asked how they wanted the families arranged. Elise said, "First, just us." She and Nora stood against the limestone wall. Then Elise asked for one group photograph. No father positions, no arranged entrance. Ruth stood beside Nora. I stood near one end. Leonard stood near the other. The photographer lifted the camera. Leonard said, "Could we get one of Elise and me after?" Elise answered him directly, "Not today." The shutter clicked before anyone could soften it. In the courtyard, Leonard approached me. "Take me to the lunch." He said it quietly, as if lowering his voice changed the shape of the request. "No." His eyes moved toward Elise. "Tell her I will be late." "Tell her yourself." For a second, anger rose into his face. Then he looked at the doors, the taxis beyond the curb, and the phone in his hand. He called Elise. She answered. I could not hear her words. I did not need to. Leonard walked away and ordered another taxi. Elise came over to me while we waited. "Are you coming to lunch?" she asked. "Do you want me there?" She gave me a tired look. "I am going to have to answer that question for a while, aren't I? Only until we both believe the answer belongs to you." "Yes, Daniel, I want you there." "Then I'm coming." She hugged me. I did not look over her shoulder to see whether Leonard noticed. That mattered too. What a wedding could not repair. The lunch was warm and awkward and mostly about food. Leonard arrived 20 minutes late. Ruth did not save him a seat beside Elise. Nora talked about a leak under their kitchen sink. One of her friends told a story about a failed camping trip. No one delivered a speech about family. I was grateful. The next morning, Ruth called me. "I owe you an apology." I waited. She said, "I told myself I was protecting Elise. I was also protecting myself from Leonard being angry and from you being hurt. I made both of those feelings into her decision." "Yes. I am sorry." "Thank you." She seemed surprised that I did not say it was all right. It was not all right. It also did not need to become a lifelong trial. "What happens now?" she asked. "You call Elise when you want to know what Elise thinks. You call Leonard when you want to know what Leonard thinks. You call me when you want to know what I think. And if one of you asks me to tell the other something, say no." You make it sound simple. It is simple. That does not mean it is easy. 3 weeks later, she tested it. She called to invite me to a family lunch. "I would like you to come," she said. "That invitation is from me. Leonard also mentioned he needs a ride, but he will call you himself." The words sounded almost formal. I respected the effort. "I would like to come," I said. Leonard called 10 minutes later. "Ruth says you are going Saturday." She invited me. I accepted. "Can you collect me?" "No." There was a pause. "So we are still doing this." "Doing what?" "Punishing me." "I'm attending the same lunch. I'm not available to drive you." You are available. You just said you are going. My car traveling to a place does not make its passenger seat yours. He hung up. That sentence stayed with me afterward because it was not polished. It was simply true. Leonard came to lunch in a taxi. He was cold to me for the first half hour and civil for the second. Nothing dramatic happened. That was how I learned the boundary could hold without a crisis to support it. Elise left me a voicemail the week after the wedding. Call me when you have time. I want to ask about Route 26. I smiled before I understood why. She had not called Ruth to ask when I might be in a good mood. She had not asked Nora to test whether I was still hurt. She had called my number and left her own question. I called back. She wanted to know whether I remembered the corner where I used to collect her after science club. Of course. Nora and I drove past it. The pharmacy is gone. It became a hardware store 6 years ago. You know that? A driver keeps noticing routes even after he stops driving them. We talked for 20 minutes, not about the wedding. A month later, she invited me to help choose shelves for their apartment. I went. In October, she invited me to a Sunday walk by the river. I had already promised a neighbor I would help move a workbench. My first instinct was to rearrange the workbench. The old machinery said that a no might close the road again. Instead, I said, I can't Sunday. Tuesday evening? That works. She did not withdraw. She did not ask Ruth whether I was angry. She changed the day. That small exchange repaired more than the group photograph. Ruth changed too, though imperfectly. Once she began telling me how Elise felt about a holiday plan, stopped mid-sentence and said, You should ask her. I will. This is irritating, Ruth said. It is. We both laughed. Leonard took longer. For 2 months, he contacted me only when a practical need gave him cover. He asked for an airport ride. I declined. He asked whether I could collect a package from Ruth. I told him to ask her. Each refusal brought a short accusation or a longer silence. Then in December, he called and said, I booked a car for Saturday. Are you going to the lunch? The order of those sentences mattered. I haven't decided, I said. Elise said Nora is making too much soup. That sounds like Nora. He cleared his throat. If you come, I would like to speak with you. About what? The wedding. I felt no rush to reward him for arranging one ride. I'll think about it. All right. He did not call Ruth and ask her to persuade me. At least, if he did, she did not carry the message. I went to the lunch. Leonard apologized for the sentence he had handed me in the car. He did not apologize for every absence. He did not suddenly understand the years from my side. I wanted the picture to do work I had not done, he said. That was honest. Yes, I replied. He asked whether we could start over. No, I said. But we can start from here. Starting from there meant he arranged his own transportation. It meant he did not call me for reports on Elise. It meant I did not explain him to her when he disappointed her. We were not friends. We became 2 men who could sit in the same room without asking a woman to manage the distance between us. That was enough. 6 months after the wedding, Elise came to my duplex with the album. The first pages were mostly her and Nora, outside the annex, laughing in the ceremony room, standing beneath a sycamore in the courtyard. Then came the group photograph. Ruth stood beside Nora. Leonard stood at one end, his boutonniere still crooked. I stood at the other. No arrangement in the picture explained the history. Elise tapped the empty caption line beneath it. The photographer asked for names. Then give her names. She asked how everyone is related. I waited. What do you want me to put for you? She asked. Stepfather sounds like paperwork. Dad feels like I am taking something from somebody. Daniel feels like it does not say enough. There had been a time when that question might have felt like a medal being offered after a long race. but titles had caused enough crowding around her doorway. "Put what is true when you say it," I told her. She looked down at the photograph. "Daniel and me," she said. "That is true." She wrote it in pencil. My phone rang on the porch table. For years, difficult family calls had gone to voicemail first. Then Ruth would call and explain what the caller had meant. Sometimes I let that happen, because waiting felt safer than hearing a direct need. The screen showed Elise's name, though she was sitting 3 feet away. I looked at her. She grinned. "Practice." I answered before voicemail. "Hello?" "Nora and I want to drive your old school route next Saturday," she said into her phone. "Will you come if we pick a day that works for you?" I checked the calendar beside my chair. "Saturday morning works. 10? 10. Then she added, "Leonard arranged his own ride to Mom's lunch next month. He asked me to tell you he hopes you'll come." I raised an eyebrow. Elise caught herself. "No," she said. "That is his message. He can call you." "Yes." "Do you know yet whether you want to go?" "No." "All right." She did not ask me to decide for her comfort. I did not promise an answer to prove I had healed. We ended the call, though she was still on my porch. The following Saturday, Elise and Nora arrived at 10. Elise took the passenger seat. Nora sat behind us. I did not drive because they needed me to. I went because they had asked me directly, and I had said yes. At the first turn, Elise pointed toward the road ahead. "Which way?" I told her, and she drove.